One thing that's bothering me though when I step back out to the timeline is that the color in this background shot isn't exactly matching our foreground shot. Well, remember I can copy and move effects around, so why don't I take that color correction we applied to the original shot of the horse and I'll just drop it there. Now we've added that yellow into those trees as well. And finally, of course, I'll go ahead and process this out. So this is what we mean about saving time and working faster. You don't have to stop. You don't have to think about where your media is. You don't have to move media. You don't have to worry about what format it's on. You just have to concentrate on being creative. And there's our key that we did very quickly. Now, I have one more example I want to show you in this spot. And it's one of my favorite examples in the whole project. And it's this scene. It starts out fairly simple. Now, we conformed this from our Final Cut XML. So we've got our picture-in-picture effect over top of our background. And if you remember the original spot, in this scene, the dog is watching the horse as it dances in the rain. So we've got to composite this clean shot of the dog in, because obviously that would have been a hard shot to pull off in a practical production shot. So let's start by taking this into our 3D compositing area. So I'll just move to a clean source area here, and I'll step into Action. Action is our 3D compositing environment. And I'm just going to load up those layers. So now I've got these layers pulled into Action. You can see that this one's positioned over top of that background. So the first challenge I have to deal with is some color correction. Okay, as I move through this scene, you can see that the scene starts out kind of dark, and at the end it gets kind of bright. Also, the lighting doesn't quite match. This one's got a little bit more of a blue tone to it. This one's got a little bit more of a neutral white tone. So let's go into our media layers here, and I'll go to that color corrector again, and I'm going to use the color warper one more time. This time I'm not doing a selective color correction. What I'm going to do instead is work in context and start matching these scenes. So I'm going to use the match tool, and I'll match the dog to the white fur on the horse. And you can see that starts to pull the color range between those two. Then I'm going to add another selective maybe for the background because it's a little bright there, something like that. And that starts to pull that in. And you can see I can just keep adding these selectives, and they just sort of add onto each other through the scene. Now when I go down to the end, it's gotten very bright. So how are we going to deal with that? Well, let's just again do another color correction. And now these will animate over time to bring those looks together. And we can even add one more here and maybe one more here like that. So we can just keep working through until we get it right. Even in the middle, I can step in and add sort of a step along the way. So this does a pretty good job of getting our dog to match into the horse through the entire scene. So that's step one. The next step is one of the more challenging, and that's removing the background so that we can see the dog over the background scene with the horse. How are we going to do that? Well, there's no keyer in the world that's going to chroma key this, and the luminance key isn't going to work. There's too much contrast and too much internal work there. So this becomes a rotoscoping task. But watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back into the keyer, and I'm going to start by just using a luminance key and getting rid of any matte. And then I'm going to use a garbage mask one more time. And this is a different approach to using this mask. So what I want to do is use the mask to define where we bring our dog character into the background. But unlike last time, I'm going to be very, very precise of where I'm putting this. I'm going to follow right along the edge of his leg. I'm going to create this mask that follows exactly around the body of the dog. I'm going to essentially rotoscope him on one frame. Now I've actually started ahead of time with a mask that follows around him, so you can see how that works. So this is just a single frame. It's not animated. Now if we go in tight, you can see this is pretty good. I might need to adjust it a little bit here. Maybe get a little bit more up on his head. We can fix it around his ear. Whatever, I can spend some time getting this just about right. But at some point, I have to deal with the fact that over time, he's moving. So I don't want to do this by hand. I don't want to adjust every single frame. So watch this. I'm going to use that same tracking tool you saw before to select all of those points and step into the stabilizer. And now we actually have a tracking point for every single one of those garbage mask points. So this is really powerful. This is over 100 different trackers. And what I want to do is adjust them all together. So I'm going to gang those together so I can start making them all a little bit bigger. Let's try something like that. And then over 60 frames, I'm just going to hit Analyze, and you can see how quickly this starts working. So again, this is the speed at which you can work. Now you can see a point falling off, no problem. We're going to go back and fix that because we have complete control over every point in our garbage mask. So now let's go back and see what our mask result looks like. Well, it's pretty good on most of them, but you can see that one point tended to fall off. Well, watch this. This is the level of control we have. I can grab that point. I'm actually not happy with a couple of points down here. I can grab those points as well. And then when I step back into that stabilizer, only those points are selected. So now I can come back and make adjustments just to that part of the track. This is a really powerful tool because now when I analyze with a slightly bigger tracker box, you can see it's going to start cleaning up that work there. So this is a great tool that you can use all the time to make your life easier. These are the kind of tools that make your clients come back for more. So let's turn back and see what our result is. And you can see that does a pretty good job of following our dog. And if we look at the mat, I've essentially created that rotoscope automatically. So that's a really fast way to go in and do that. Now we're not quite done yet, so I'm going to step back into our composite, and we've got a couple of more things to do. You can see there's some background motion we need to deal with. Well, let's go ahead and track again. And I keep talking about how great this tracker is. Well, check this out. This is a scene with rain falling in the foreground. This is not a tracking point. It's just a rock on the ground. I'll hit Analyze, and it can stick right to it. And what's going to happen is that tracking data is then going to be applied to the axis that controls the position of the dog. So now that motion from the background is working for our foreground character element that we're adding in. So let's just go ahead and put him back into place, and I can pick him up gesturally, and we want to put him maybe about right there, something like that. And now we've got our scene coming together. Now a couple more things I can do. Maybe I'll blur him out a little bit. Let's just add a blur of 2 there, maybe a blur of 2 there. And the last thing that's bothering me, though, even though we did that color correction to match the scene, is that it's not really looking all that realistic. He really should be a little darker. There should be a shadow passing over him, something like that. So this is where we're going to take advantage of the 3D workspace here in action by adding a light to the scene. So I've added this light in, and you can see it's starting to light that 2D flat element. In fact, if I orbit my camera around, you can see that that light actually exists in 3D space. So let's take advantage of that. What I'm going to do is take that light, and I'll change its intensity. So I'll turn off the clamp so we can make it brighter. I'll adjust the spread so it's more of a spotlight. And then we'll just rotate it down so it's kind of pointing at our dog character there. And we'll just adjust the fall off till we get something that's looking a little bit more gentle on him there. And now I've got this light that I can really start moving around and making changes to my scene. Now I want this to be integrated into the scene. So see how the horse is moving and the light's not really moving? Well, check this out. What I've been doing as I work here in action is building up this schematic view. So here's our light, here's our layer with the dog that we cut out. And what I'm going to do is add a new axis in. Now this isn't connected to anything. You can see it just sitting there. And I'm going to grab some tracking data from the background. So we'll just drop this here. Again, Analyze, sticking right to it. And now this data is going to drive that light and help us tie that light into the scene by simply taking the light and parenting it to that axis. And now you can see that as the horse comes around, all we really have to do is maybe rotate our light a little bit, and we start to get some of that light falling on and hitting our character there. We can play around with this until we get it to look exactly how we want. Play with the intensity, and you can see we're kind of simulating that shadow coming around on our character there. Maybe we have it hit him a little bit at the beginning as well. So we do something like that. So again, we really quickly used the 3D space to create some realism that wasn't there with those flat layers. So that's a great way to use that 3D space. And then finally, when it's time to render that, I'll just go back to the beginning and hit render, and you can see that in under 20 seconds I'm going to have my final result at full res HD. So again, being able to work this fast is incredible. It doesn't slow your creativity down, it enhances it. And so just a few more seconds, and I'll play back that final for you. And again, we've been doing all of this inside of Smoke. I haven't had to go to any external application for any of these tools. Let's take a look at that final result. So not too bad. Maybe it gets a little too bright in the middle, but that's pretty good. Now, when we're done with that, we simply step back, move into our timeline, and we edit that back in. So now we've got our new scene in context of our edit. So again, being able to bring all these tools together in one place is what Smoke's all about.